Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. So Anthony Joshua has revealed some of his sparring partners for his fight with Kubrat Pulev, and they include Hosea Stewart and Bryant Jennings and David Adelayi. Now Adelayi is obviously 3-0 with 3 knockouts, a different kind of resume to Bryant Jennings, because Bryant Jennings has been in there with the likes of Luis Ortiz, Oscar Rivas and Joe Joyce, but he has proven that he struggles when he gets to a certain kind of level. But good quality sparring for Anthony Joshua in preparation for Kubrat Pulev. Also, the other guy is Hosea Stewart, and at the moment he's 0-2 as a professional and hasn't fought since 2018. So he's clearly in there just as a sparring partner to get that size of Kubrat Pulev in there, because Kubrat Pulev is not a small guy. He's around at 6'4", 6'5", and he is also quite a strong guy on the inside as well. So that is probably what he is looking to replicate with these set of sparring partners. Now, Bryant Jennings is probably a very good fit for the tailored style of Kubrat Pulev, because Pulev is very bouncy, paws with the jab, his positioning is incredible, so Bryant Jennings will replicate that side to Kubrat Pulev, and the size and power will come from Hosea Stewart and David Adelayi. David Adelayi, we don't know how good he is just at the moment. We do know that he is a very good prospect and punches extremely hard. He's around 6'4", 6'5", so he has that height, he has the reach, he has a pretty good jab as well. So he will be able to replicate that style of Kubrat Pulev, which is what they are trying to do. Now, the thing is, when someone is sparring in preparation for a fight, is you are never going to find someone who is tailored completely to that fighter. You are never going to be able to find someone who's 100% matched to the opponent you're going to be in there with. So what you must do is break it down. Find different attributes in different fighters. That is what Anthony Joshua will be doing as he prepares for Pulev. So punching power in David Adelayi, jab and movement of Bryant Jennings, then size and strength of Hosea Stewart. Things like that. Break it down. Different aspects, different attributes of Kubrat Pulev, because he's not necessarily going to find all of them in one opponent. Now, I think that for this training camp, he will find it a little bit easier to find sparring partners for Kubrat Pulev. A little, not a lot. The thing is, with Andy Ruiz, his last opponent, is he did find it difficult the first time around getting sparring partners that could replicate Andy Ruiz. In the second camp, he did bring in some different sparring partners, and one of them was Timothy Motton, who, interestingly enough and rather inspiringly, he quit his business or working as a carpet fitter or something like that, and went to work with Anthony Joshua to pursue his dream of boxing. So great story in there for Timothy Motton, and I think that he has remained a part of that team with Anthony Joshua. He is often seen on Instagram with AJ, so great from Timothy Motton, but obviously Anthony Joshua needed more time to try and replicate the style of Andy Ruiz in a sparring so he could work on certain things. With Kubrat Pulev, it is not as difficult, but it is still difficult, because obviously Kubrat Pulev is not a conventional fighter himself. He's very different. Like I said before, he's very amateurish, very bouncy, paws with the jab, and he has that style where he's very awkward and unpredictable. That is why Anthony Joshua needs to work on a way to figure him out, because Pulev is, interestingly enough, always in a position to land punches. He has great positioning and footwork as well. He's not fast on his feet necessarily, and he does fall over his front foot quite often when he rushes in, but he does have good punch selection, and he is always in a position to land punches. That is the dangerous thing about Kubrat Pulev. His positioning is on point, so therefore he can counter at any time. So what I've seen him do in the past is spin a fighter, so he will come around to the side, step around, and then he's able to land punches. So if Anthony Joshua gets that jab out there and does try to use angles, Pulev will be right there with him, trying to cut off those angles for Anthony Joshua. Now, the interesting thing will be, in the rematch with Andy Ruiz, Anthony Joshua opted to go on the back foot and allow Andy Ruiz to have a centre ring. What will he do in there with Kubrat Pulev? Will he allow Pulev to take centre ring and Anthony Joshua will be on the outside? Maybe. Will Anthony Joshua demand a centre ring and push Kubrat Pulev back? I think that what Anthony Joshua will look to do is push him back. I think that Anthony Joshua will want to take his centre ring and get his jab out there, establish his jab early and establish a double jab so that he can come around at those angles. But he must be careful because, as I said earlier, Kubrat Pulev is very good at coming around to the side. So I think that if he puts Kubrat Pulev on the back foot, then Pulev will be uncomfortable, because I think Pulev does like to stand there. He's not necessarily this big knockout puncher. He doesn't have a lot of knockouts, but he does punch very hard. He just doesn't do it consistently because he opts to box instead. So he is a boxer puncher. So what Anthony Joshua does need to do is establish his jab and make sure he lands some good, powerful shots to push Kubrat Pulev back. And I think that the question many of us do have is Anthony Joshua going to be like he was before, or is he going to be similar to how he was in the rematch with Ruiz? Is this the new AJ? Well, I think that Anthony Joshua is very good at adapting his style to his opponent, so I don't necessarily believe that he has changed completely from that Andy Ruiz Jr. loss. He's changed a bit, he must have done, because obviously he's taken his first career loss and understood that there are certain vulnerabilities there that can be exploited by opponents. Every fighter has them. So Anthony Joshua has adapted and tailored his style, but that is to fit his opponent. So with Andy Ruiz, it was important to box because Ruiz wants to fight. So the best thing to do in there with someone who wants to fight is to box them, especially someone like Andy Ruiz who wants to get on the inside and get up close and have it. So what Anthony Joshua needed to do was keep it long because AJ has the physical advantages, the height and the reach, and probably the power advantage over Andy Ruiz. It's just Andy Ruiz had that extreme durability. He was able to walk through punches to land punches. Anthony Joshua did not need to do that in there with Ruiz, so what he did need to do was box. So he done that, and that ultimately was enough to beat Andy Ruiz. Whereas in there with Kubrat Pulev, Pulev will want to box Anthony Joshua, so what Joshua must do is not allow him to do that. If Joshua makes a boxing match of it, he can probably beat Kubrat Pulev because I believe he is better, but he just makes it easier for Pulev to stay in the fight. So if Anthony Joshua makes it a battle of the hard jabs, make sure he establishes that jab, slips Pulev's, because Pulev does have a good jab, but he's not as fast as Anthony Joshua. So if Joshua slips that jab, gets on the inside, because interestingly enough, I know we spoke about Andy Ruiz and the fact that Anthony Joshua needed to keep him on the outside. The difference is in this fight, Kubrat Pulev needs to keep Anthony Joshua on the outside because Joshua is the inside fighter in this particular fight. He wasn't in there with Ruiz because he didn't have the attributes that Ruiz had. The weight, the durability, the speed, and the power on the inside. Ruiz's style is tailored on an inside fighting game. He cannot box very well on the outside. Joseph Parker learnt that. Joseph Parker fought him in the first 3 rounds, and he lost every single one of them. Then he resorted to boxing, and that is how Joseph Parker adapted to beat Andy Ruiz. He started boxing him instead of trying to fight him inside the pocket. That is what AJ done and rectified in the rematch. He decided he was going to box Andy Ruiz and keep it long, not try and fight on the inside because that is Andy Ruiz Jr.'s game. The interesting thing this time around though is that you have to flip it because Kubrat Pulev is the one who will want to keep Anthony Joshua at range because Joshua is the inside fighter this time around. So if Joshua can do that, use his boxing abilities. He doesn't necessarily need to lose his shape and get wild in there. He can use his boxing abilities to get close to Pulev, then get those short shots off on the inside. The short uppercut left hook, that will be devastating in there with Pulev, and the likelihood is that Kubrat Pulev won't even see it coming because it comes fast and it comes from a place where he cannot see it. The uppercut, obviously he isn't going to be able to see that coming, so if he doesn't see it coming, those shots cause the biggest effect. Now, a big question is, what will Kubrat Pulev do? I mean, the last time he was in a world title shot against Vladimir Klitschko, he did kind of freeze on the big stage. So he got dropped multiple times in that fight and didn't show the best punch resistance, but he kept getting up. So Pulev does have that toughness about him, but ultimately I think that on the big stage, maybe he did lose it in that case, but this time there will be no crowds there. So maybe that will suit Kubrat Pulev being in an environment where he doesn't have 70 or 80,000 fans chanting Anthony Joshua's name. So he will not have that to contend with. Now I don't know whether that will be a big factor. I don't know whether the crowd or the magnitude of the event that got to Kubrat Pulev and forced him to unravel, or whether he just got caught with a left hook he did not see coming and didn't recover. The thing is though, he got continuously peppered with that left hook. He did not see it coming and he did not defend against it. He stood there in the center of the ring and almost tried to make a fight of it with Vladimir Klitschko. And the problem is in that fight is he went in there probably looking to hurt Vladimir Klitschko back, because as soon as he was hurt himself, at that point he decided to get macho. I mean, even when he stood up, he stuck his tongue out at Vladimir Klitschko and stood on one foot to make it seem like he's got his balance, he's okay. Klitschko had just caught him with a good shot, and ultimately it was just a flash knockdown. That was what Pulev was trying to demonstrate with his antics in that first round with Klitschko. But then he got dropped again and again and again and stopped in the 5th round, completely laid out in that 5th round. So he was trying to be macho with Klitschko. So when he got knocked down, he decided that he was going to try and make a fight of it with Klitschko, because he had that thing in his head that Klitschko had this vulnerability. The same way he is approaching Anthony Joshua, because he said Joshua is a little bit chinny, and he's even said that Anthony Joshua is mentally weak. So he believes there are vulnerabilities there that he can exploit in Anthony Joshua, but he obviously believed that also in the Klitschko fight. And in that Klitschko fight, he decided that he was going to fight fire with fire, because obviously he believed there was that vulnerability there with Klitschko that we saw early on in his career. 3 knockout losses, and Klitschko was continuously dropped in even fights that he won. So there definitely was that suspect chin there for Klitschko. That is why most fighters going in there would expect to maybe hurt him or try and knock him out, just as Pulev did, especially after he was hurt. The best thing that Pulev could have done was get back behind his boxing. He has a good jab, so use that to create some distance between him and a Klitschko. But he didn't do anything to defend against that left hook that was coming, and he did not know how. So what happened was he continuously got caught with it until it knocked him out. So in there with Joshua, does he expect to hurt Joshua continuously? Does he expect to fight him and come out on top? Because if he does, that won't happen. I know that Anthony Joshua has been dropped multiple times in his career, 4 times in the Ruiz fight, once in the Klitschko fight, but the thing is about Joshua, he's never been knocked down by an opponent he hasn't knocked down first. Klitschko, he knocked him down in the 5th. Andy Ruiz knocked him down in the 3rd and ultimately got dropped after that point. So that shows that Anthony Joshua was showing this level of inexperience in there with those fighters, something he will undoubtedly have learnt from now. So if Pulev goes in there expecting to be able to hurt Anthony Joshua, yes, he can, because he's a powerful puncher. He's a big guy. In the heavyweight division, anyone can hurt anyone because they are just so big, especially the giants. But if he goes in there expecting to fight with Anthony Joshua and come out on top, then he won't. And I don't believe he will do that because he learnt his lesson in the Klitschko fight. So we can talk about the lessons that Anthony Joshua learned in his loss then rematch win over Andy Ruiz, but let's not forget what Klitschko must have taught Kubrat Pulev in that fight, some vital lessons that he did need to learn. Because Pulev is not necessarily an out-and-out fighter, he doesn't like to trade up on the inside, he would rather hold. And he is strong on the inside. We saw that in the Hughie Fury fight, where he was able to outmuscle him and beat him on the inside by not even fighting, because Anthony Joshua will want to fight on the inside in this fight. So what Pulev will try to do is smother his work, so Anthony Joshua cannot work on the inside. So that is an aspect he will try and take away from Anthony Joshua's game. So Joshua must not allow that to happen. So what will be important is Anthony Joshua's footwork, positioning and movement. The jab also to close that distance. Pulev will try and keep him on the outside with that jab, that awkward style, making Anthony Joshua second guess what is going to be coming next. That is going to be important for Kubrat Pulev. If he is able to do that, then he can have a level of success in there with AJ. But if AJ does not allow that to happen, then Pulev will be found wanting at this level. Now I think that Anthony Joshua has learnt that it's not just about focusing on what he does well, but taking things away from his opponent. So thinking about what does Kubrat Pulev do well, then try and take that away from him. So the jab, the right hand, the power shots, the distance that Pulev likes to fight at, which isn't a long distance, it's long to mid-range. He does like to stay there in the pocket. He doesn't like to be too far away from his opponent. So if Anthony Joshua breaks him down like that, then he can start taking those certain things away from Kubrat Pulev, because Pulev will have a certain game plan, much as AJ will. So it's who executes their game plan better is often the one who wins the fight. Yes, physical attributes and abilities do come in there as well, of course they do, but there is a game plan there for a reason. At this level, there are so many different types of heavyweights. Tyson Fury, huge, but can move extremely well and is very fast. Deontay Wilder, huge, powerful puncher, not very good boxer. Then Andy Ruiz, small, fast, powerful, durable. Then Kubrat Pulev, tall, bouncy, strong, and very awkward. So there are so many different styles that Anthony Joshua needs to tailor his boxing abilities to, and that definitely does come back to the sparring partners, finding different things that his opponents do well and trying to implement those things in the fight. So what he will do is find certain opponents and make sure that they can replicate a certain part of Kubrat Pulev's game. That is what Anthony Joshua will do in sparring with these sparring partners that he has selected. They are good sparring partners. Bryant Jennings, quality sparring. Derek Chisora even used him in camp for Alexander Usyk, and David Adeleye, very good sparring. I know he's inexperienced, but still, he has that size, that weight, that punching power, and the jab that will replicate a certain part of Pulev. These are important things in the build-up to a fight of this magnitude. And I do think we will see a bit of the old AJ in this fight. I think that he will want to make a statement. I think that he will want to hurt and knock out Kubrat Pulev because he definitely has the power to do so, and he will want that knockout streak coming back, especially considering he's going to be fighting Tyson Fury hopefully in 2021. He's going to want to make a big statement and come off of a knockout win over Kubrat Pulev, but the one thing he needs to be careful about is he's not focusing on making a statement, but on beating Kubrat Pulev, because that is what he was focusing on, going over to America and fighting Andy Ruiz, making a statement. He doesn't need to do that. The important thing at this stage is get the victory and move on to undisputed, because that is the fight Anthony Joshua wants more so than anything else. So beat Kubrat Pulev and then it's Tyson Fury. That is what Anthony Joshua needs to focus on. That is obviously heavily dependent on the WBO situation as well, because Alexander Usyk, now beaten Derek Chisora, has an opportunity to enforce his position as a WBO mandatory. Whether that happens or not, we don't know at the moment. They are clearly still working towards that Tyson Fury fight. But as I said, at the moment the important thing is Kubrat Pulev. This is the big fight for Anthony Joshua, and I think it will be very entertaining. It has to be, because I think that Anthony Joshua has an opponent in front of him that he definitely can hurt, and someone who he can definitely get to. I would expect Anthony Joshua to stop him around rounds 4 to 7, maybe 8. I think Kubrat Pulev does have the ability to stick in there with Anthony Joshua, but I think when Anthony Joshua starts going through the gears and moving through the levels, that is when Kubrat Pulev will find it difficult to follow him to that place, and I think that he will be found wanting when it comes to those certain things. It will come down to the fundamentals. Who makes the better adjustments at this level? Anthony Joshua has proven he can do that in the past. He's done it at a level Kubrat Pulev has only been to once in his career, and he came unstuck in that fight. Joshua has done it continuously, and that shows on his resume. Because Anthony Joshua might not have had as many fights as Kubrat Pulev, but he's had more experience at world level. That is clear for everyone to see in his resume. Yes, Anthony Joshua has had less fights than Pulev, but if you look at the level Anthony Joshua has fought at continuously back to back, 2 unification fights, winning the heavyweight world titles again over Andy Ruiz Jr., becoming a 2-time heavyweight world champion. Anthony Joshua has a level and he stuck to that throughout his career. Kubrat Pulev is yet to do that. It will be interesting to see how he handles this fight, and I do believe this will be an entertaining one. An entertaining one because I think that Anthony Joshua will get his knockout streak back and get a KO victory over Kubrat Pulev. Guys, anyway, what are your thoughts on this? Anthony Joshua is ramping up training, getting ready, preparing for Pulev. December 12th is the date. O2 Arena is the venue. Let's go. Unified heavyweight world titles on the line. There is a Tyson Fury fight potentially next year, but that is not important at the moment. The important thing is Kubrat Pulev. But what that Tyson Fury fight does represent is something for Anthony Joshua to work towards. When he lost to Ruiz, there was nothing beyond the Ruiz fight. There was after because he knew he would be rematching him, but this time around, that Tyson Fury fight is there. It is apparently made, so that fight will be going ahead if Anthony Joshua beats Kubrat Pulev. So that serves as extra motivation for AJ in this fight. He must come through Kubrat Pulev this time around because obviously that Tyson Fury fight is right there on the horizon. So when Pulev and his team are talking about an upset, yes, that could potentially happen because in heavyweight boxing, anything can happen. But Anthony Joshua this time around has that motivation of the Fury fight. It's right there in his grasp. All he has to do is beat Pulev, then he's on track for undisputed. Guys, anyway, drop your thoughts on this in the comments below. Leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new. Thanks guys.